Take Islam as a specific example. Islam, mainstream Islam, not just Al-Qaeda style Islam, just any Islam that really is worthy of the name in the year 2021, is founded on the claim that the Quran is the literal word of God.
And then I have Muslim people who are listening to my biblical lectures, and
more than that,
they say,
by the way. Yeah.
Yes, and more than that. And, they say, well, Peterson doesn't know it yet, but he's really a Muslim. And that's very, that's an honor, just like it was an honor to be approached by these Orthodox Jews. And that hasn't only happened once. And I've had lots of correspondence with people. And the same thing has happened with the Orthodox Christians, and to some degree the Catholics, and lesser so the Protestants. And so I don't know exactly what to make of that. We talked about this a little bit.
Yeah.
And let's talk about proof. Well, for me, the proof of faith is the attractiveness of its adherents. And that's something to think about, right? Well, are you a shining example of the Muslim faith? Well, how hard do you shine?
I can walk through London with a t-shirt saying Jesus is gay and nothing will happen to me. If I did the same thing with the Islamic prophet, I'd be dead before I got to the end of the street.
Boom. The stumbling block for me in relationship to Islam, I can understand Christianity in relationship to Judaism, but I can't understand Islam in relationship to Christ, because I understand the Christian idea that Christ was a transcendent consequence of the prophetic tradition, and the Christian insistence that his life is associated with the divinity of the Word, and that is in some sense a final statement. And so I don't understand how Islam moves beyond that and still places Christ in a place of centrality. It is time for those of you in the Muslim world to stop fighting among yourselves, you Shiites and Sunnis, and also time to stop regarding the Christians, and even more specifically, the Jews, as your enemies. Why? Not least because you have the enemy located in the wrong place. First, the best place to find Satan, let's say, is within. If you think the true enemy is in someone else's heart, then you haven't thought nearly long enough about the darkness within, and you have therefore fallen prey to the most subtle temptation of the ancient demonic spirit.
Is that one, we should hate and fear and despise and resist and never befriend unbelievers. Right, that message comes through on virtually every page. And a hell has been prepared for these unbelievers, where their skins will be endlessly burned off of them and replenished so that they can be tortured anew, right?
Do you think there's any relationship between that claim and your observation that failure to take refuge in the sacred as you've laid it out dooms you to possession by the default network and puts you into that hell?
Yes. Okay. So it is possible to give a very enlightened reading of this text, or really any text, that allows you to step out of its divisive and toxic implications.
Absolutely. I call for the Islamification of the entire Western world, because otherwise we have atheistic countries. And when you remove religion, now what do you have? People are now adhering to woke ideology and this new insane religion. Everybody has a religion. If you remove Christianity from the West, you don't have atheists. You now have these people adhering to this woke, new world liberal psychopathy, where people are doing absolutely insane and disgusting things to each other and children. And they're sitting there saying that that's progressive somehow. And it's absolutely and utterly disgusting. So if we need a God to believe in to preserve morality and decency amongst humanity, then let's have a God that people actually fear and respect. And that's why Islam is the only religion left on the planet. There's no other religion you can possibly name that even matters.
If I had to bet on one religion as if I were betting on the stock market for the future, you have to bet on Islam. Because Muslims are intolerant. And I'm not saying that disrespectfully, because if you're tolerant of everything, then you stand for nothing.
Yeah.
Christians are so tolerant now. You don't believe it. They have gay pastors that I'm not even anti-gay, but if the book says don't have, like, what do you believe in now? If you're tolerant of everything, you stand for nothing. I respect people who stick up for what they believe in. It's not even about me believing in it. I respect them because they believe, and they will defend Muslims are the only people who will defend their religion. They will defend their beliefs. They refuse to be mocked. They refuse to be insulted. And I respect that about them.
I was born in a Christian country. I was raised as a Christian, and I've always been very respectful of Islam. And it's become more and more obvious to me and more pertinent that Islam is the last religion on the planet. It's just, for me, it feels like the last religion on earth. I feel like there's no other religion. People say to me, why did you convert? And I said, I don't really feel it as a conversion. It's almost like I knew God was real, and now I've become religious.
On the conceptual front, on the psychological and sociological front, and in the final analysis, on the theological front. So, how about we all quit squabbling over trinkets and details and face the real problem? And I should also point out that it is not the individual carriers of the woke, politically correct, degenerate, neo-Marxist ideas that should be regarded as the enemy either. First, we must take the idea that the satanic impulse within is the prime enemy with all due seriousness.
He said, tell me about Islam. And he said, Islam is that you make the testimony of faith, that you pray 5 times a day, that you fast Ramadan, that you pay zakat, and that you, if you're able to, you make a pilgrimage once in your lifetime to Mecca. And the Prophet Muhammad said, faith is to believe that there's only one God, and that Muhammad, which includes all the previous messengers, is a messenger of God, to believe in angels, to believe in the books that God has revealed, to believe in the last day, the day of judgment, and to believe in the measuring out of good and evil, that good and evil is part of life. And then he said, tell me about ihsan, which is the third dimension of Islam. And he said, and this is the dimension of virtuous being, like being a person of arity, of excellence in the world. And he said, ihsan is to worship God as if you see God. And if you don't see him, at least you know that he sees you. The Muslim theology, it's a radical monotheism that even, I think, it transcends the monotheism of Judaism, which has some anthropomorphic elements in it that the Muslims would not accept. But generally, the Jews and the Christians agree on the theology. Rabbis, I've had many talks with rabbis, and they see Islam. In fact, Kohler says that Muslims were always seen as full proselytes of the Noahidic laws, whereas Christians were not because of the Trinity. So the Trinity is, the principle of the triad is, in Plato, in the Timaeus, talks about that. So the principle of the triad is a very powerful principle, and there are many, many trinities in the world that we see.